Welcome back to the Winter Growers Podcast. Today, my guests are Jillian and Ross Mickens of Open Door Farm in Cedar Grove, North Carolina. Jillian and Ross are the next-door neighbors to Vera and Gordon of 10 Mothers Farm, who were previous guests on the show, and they work collaboratively with them to help fill their winter CSA boxes by supplying many of the land-intensive crops like potatoes and winter squash. With 5 acres under cultivation and 11 seasons under their belt, they recently made the transition to winter-only sales, selling at the Carborough Farmers Market from mid-August to the end of March, while using the main season to tend to storage and root crop production, as well as rest during the hottest months of the year. Both the focus on winter-only sales and the collaborative relationship with neighboring farms creates an interesting farm business model that we get to better understand and explore as a potential model for winter growing in the warmer winter climates of the South.
Today's episode of the Winter Growers Podcast is brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. Since 1973, Johnny's has supported farmers and gardeners with superior seeds, tools, and information to help ensure their growing success and help feed their communities and families. The research farm is at the heart of Johnny's, where they trial thousands of varieties and tools every year. Their breeding program uniquely focuses on introducing varieties that meet the needs or solve the challenges mixed market, small farmers, and avid gardeners face. Visit johnnyseeds.com for innovative new varieties and time-tested favorites to grow this season. You can also browse their online growers library, link in the description, for a wealth of free educational resources. The employee owners at Johnny's look forward to growing with you. Today's episode is also brought to you by Rimmel Greenhouses.
Whether it's tomatoes to market, flowers in the spring, or your family's harvest, growing in a greenhouse protected from the weather provides the right environment that you need for a harvest that you can count on. Rimmel greenhouses are designed for durability and offer the quality that you need to grow productively year-round. Visit rimmelgreenhouses.com to get a quote today.
If I may editorialize for a second, I own a Rimmel tunnel. I love it. We built it ourselves, and I really appreciated the quality of the tunnel as well as the customer service we received in the process. So make sure to check them out. All right, enjoy the show.
So hi to Jillian and Ross of Open Door Farm. Welcome to the Winter Growers Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I first learned about your farm through Vera and Gordon of 10 Mothers, since you both farm in the same town in North Carolina. And last summer, I came across one of your Instagram posts indicating that you're transitioning over to more winter-only production. And I was really curious about that decision. And I'd love to learn more about that as well. So yeah, but first I'd like to get started with a little bit more about your background, where you grew up, what sort of farming influences you had growing up, how you met, just some of the basic details.
Yeah. So we actually are originally from Caswell County in North Carolina, which is about 20 minutes north of where our farm is now. We met in high school, actually, and both went to NC State for college in Raleigh, finished college, bought a house, got a job, kind of doing all the things that you're told to do. And we had a garden that was pretty good size. Our families had always had gardens growing up. And so we just kind of started doing the same thing. And we got involved with an organization here in North Carolina called Carolina Farm Stewardship Association. We went to one of their conferences, and through that, we were introduced to the Breeze Incubator Farm here in Orange County. And that was a great little series of workshops, kind of teaching you the ins and outs of not just production, but cash flow management, business management. And at the end of that, you're able to take a small lease from that farm and kind of launch your business from there, essentially. And so we started doing that. And I think that first year we put $2,000 of our money towards kind of getting started, buying seeds and all that sort of stuff. And we were still living in Cary at the time. So it was like a 45-minute commute just to get to the garden. And we just kind of got into a farmer's market, started messing around with it. At the time, Jillian was working part-time with a nonprofit where where she was doing kind of food access work already. The best place to do math is always sitting at a bar, right? So we're sitting there and talking about what we wanted to do the next year. And, we kind of realized with what Jillian's doing with the nonprofit, we could, if we really focus on the farm, we could kind of replace that income that way. And so that was kind of how we kind of got started with, okay, let's launch this into a full farm. At the time, I had never driven a tractor at this point. It wasn't until our third year at Breeze that one of us had actually driven a tractor. And at that time, we kind of found the property that we're on now. It's about 40 acres. It was actually being sold as hunting land because the house was in such bad shape that they just discounted they didn't think anyone would try to live in it. Haha, fooled them. So we fixed up the house and moved here and bought a tractor and kept kind of growing the business out from there.
And let's just back up a little bit. What were your influences though growing up? I'm always just so curious if people didn't grow up on farms. I mean, what really inspired you to want to pursue agriculture?
So the community we grew up in is actually famous for bright leaf tobacco. They developed a new process to create that golden leaf color that you see with tobacco. And in that community, there's pretty much two professions. You were either a farmer or you worked in the school system. And both of our families were kind of educator families, but we were always adjacent to all of that farm work growing up, right? So the neighbors' kids always had tractors and stuff that they were out working on and things like that. I think it was more so driven by Jillian's mom being like an adventurous cook and always looking for great food, great ingredients, that sort of thing, that really kind of inspired us more so to kind of focus on gardening to start with.
And I think that our generation of farmers was really highly influenced by sort of popular press media around the local food movement. Like we were highly influenced by the books and the movies and all that stuff. So while we were living in Cary, we started going to the farmers market and we found this woman that was sourcing local meat. So we would go meet this lady in a parking lot and buy local pork and beef and things like that. So, that was a really, really big influence on us when we first started. Was like we were just interested in where our food started coming from and how we could be more independent from food systems and participate in local food systems.
And then when did the winter production or winter growing influences start to crop in? Because I know, obviously it's still not super common for a farming path. So I'm curious what inspired that for both of you?
I would say that we didn't do it intentionally. It just kind of sort of happened. We were we like to call it 4-season marketing versus 4-season farming, because we do farm all year round, but we're not selling year round now. So back when we were 4-season marketing, going to the farmers market all the time, we would always have spring crops left over that we were selling in the summer. So we would intentionally try to have like extra carrots and extra beets and things like that to sell in the summertime because they were very popular. So we started doing more of that, and we started dropping some of the summer crops. I think we say like we've been tomato free for like 5 years. So we just started dropping more and more of the summer crops, and then eventually we stopped going to the market around. Like we would stop going in July, and then we stopped going in August, and then we just eventually made the decision to like hard stop our season, try to run August through March, and then take the spring off for focusing on growing storage crops. So it was it wasn't very intentional, I suppose. It was just more over the years, we decided it was just so much work. I was totally burnt out of going to the market all the time, all year round. And also there was just more opportunity in the winter to sell. It was just much less competitive, or typically is much less competitive.
The data that helped us make that decision was looking at how our spring revenue, what our spring revenue looked like versus the expense of the spring. And part of that is keeping employees year round as well. We just weren't coming out with that much more money by having a lot of spring production and trying to sell lettuce when everyone else can sell lettuce just as well. So,
yeah, well, I mean, being located in North Carolina too, I'm always surprised that, more people aren't doing more of a concerted effort for winter production, just because of the climate being, generally more favorable. But then again, I know that there's plenty of other challenges for trying to grow in the winter months down where you are as well. So yeah, it's always curious, both like influences, whether they're cultural, whether they're, based on finances. I mean, there's just so many different factors that come into that decision. And it's interesting to see too, how you've also been very intentional more recently, also about really trying to focus more just on the winter sales. So what, can you just talk a little bit more about what your sales looks like? What crops in particular you're growing, fresh versus storage, and what has been the reason to focus so, more directly on the storage crops?
So I think we haven't done an official math on it, but I would say about now it seems about 80% of our sales are on storage crops and about 20% are fresh harvest crops. So that's a pretty big percentage. So right now we're heading towards the end of our marketing season. So we try to sell from August to March, and then we will be focusing on growing our storage crops during the spring months. So during the summertime, we are growing Irish potatoes, sweet potatoes, onions, and then dahlias is a thing for us. I kind of consider that a storage crop. And then we will go into like the typical fall season with all of the fresh harvest stuff. That's when we'll be doing broccoli, cauliflower, things like that. And then we'll be doing storage crops in the fall too. So beets, carrots, daikon, cabbage, and winter squash. Winter squash is another big summer one for us.
And what sort of infrastructure do you have at the farm to sort of facilitate some of this production? Caterpillar tunnels, greenhouses. Talk about your infrastructure.
I'll talk about the tunnels first because they are one of our biggest challenges on the farm. I think we've moved more to being more mechanized. So we're doing larger field plantings, trying to harvest with equipment. So we have 4 Caterpillar tunnels and a high tunnel, and we do a very poor job of managing those. To be honest, like some of them are empty right now, and that seems insane for the winter months because they could be full of lettuce and things like that. But it's just, that's a code that we haven't cracked on the farm quite yet, how to have our tunnels full during the winter time, because we're really focusing on getting the storage crop situation right and figuring all the intricacies of having high quality storage crops during the winter months. So do you want to talk about the cooler situation?
Well, so I get that narrative from, all right, we pulled things out of the field. Now what happens? So for things like winter squash, where they'll actually store better if you can wash them a little bit, essentially. So we have a AZS rinse line, and we're able to run the winter squash through that with a Sanidate mixture so that there's not as much fungal decay in the coolers. So we do that process, but then the coolers themselves are, we didn't come up with this design originally ourselves. I saw someone else do this first. They used a refrigerated shipping container. So the refrigerated shipping container is, it's a shipping container, right? So it's designed to sit outside for years and years. But the inside of it is stainless steel. It can handle the weight of a forklift inside of it. Not that we're doing that, but there's no way I can build a building comparable to that kind of structure. So we got a 40-foot shipping container, and then we cut an opening in the side for the AC unit, and then we set it up with a CoolBot system. That's the first stage of just getting it to the right temperatures. The other concerns there are particularly for winter. We still get really cold nights here. And so you kind of need a heat source in there as well to make sure your temperatures don't drop below what you have it set for. And then the other factor is humidity management. So for instance, with our winter squash unit, there is a Inkbird humidity sensor in there hooked to both a humidifier and a dehumidifier. And so these two are kind of in contention, most of the humidity level inside of the coolers as well as the temperature. So, and at this point we have a 20-foot reefer container and then two 40-foot containers as well.
So that's pretty.
And those are based on the crops. So you've got your obviously drier storage crops like winter squash, onions, and then the, potatoes, and then sweet potatoes too. So you have many different requirements for all these different crops.
Yeah, I think that's been crucial to making this transition to winter, focusing on winters. You have to have the storage space for all those crops. We harvested, I think, 20,000 pounds of winter squash this year. So you can't grow all that and have nowhere to put it. It's just going to rot over time. So that has been a challenge of us through this growth process, is fighting to find cooler space. But this way that Ross sets these reefers up, it's really efficient, really quick, and really affordable. They're not necessarily the easiest to work in and out of. Like if we had a big warehouse where we could use a pallet jack and a forklift, that'd be much preferable. But for the cost, it's easy. It's easy enough to have to deal with having to load them by hand because we can't do it with equipment or whatever. So it's just, we have this like hodgepodge of crazy reefer unit coolers all over the farm, but it definitely does a job. And the way that I like to think about it is we do all this work to fill these things, but then we've got 3 packed coolers that we're just pulling out of all winter. So it's a nice shift in mentality of like, I've got my money essentially already in this space, and all I'm going to be doing through the months is pulling it out.
So that means that you are doing a lot of the prep wash work ahead of time too, like you mentioned about the winter squash. So that I'm assuming you have a barrel washer for the carrots and beets and things like that. So everything is going in clean, bagged, sort of ready to go.
I would say that we're still figuring that all out. We had a disaster, I think it was last year. We're still trying to figure that out. How should we store the stuff? Should it be stored clean? Should it be stored dirty? And we washed all of our daikon crop the year before last, and it all completely rotted in the cooler. So now we're heading more towards, we store all of our root crops dirty and in an open crate where they can breathe a little bit, and then we cover them with a plastic tarp. And then we've also been experimenting with putting them into like a feed bag that has a little bit of airflow, but has not as much condensation as like a plastic bag. For us, plastic bags have been disastrous overall, so we're trying to figure out a better system for that. The only thing that goes in washed into the coolers and sanitized is the winter squash, but everything else, potatoes, sweet potatoes, all the root veggies are dirty, and then the onions are not, they're clean enough, right?
So then the barrel washer comes into play just prior to sale. You're washing carrots, for instance, right before.
Yes. Yep. And we couldn't do this without our barrel washer because we process so many root vegetables and potatoes every week. Like back in the day, we were doing all that on spray tables. And the barrel washer was I hate the word game changer, but it was a game changer for our situation. I mean, we can wash a ridiculous amount of stuff and it's comfortable. You're not soaking wets. You're standing up. Your clothes aren't freezing to you like it used to back in the day because you've been spraying for hours and hours. So that was a really great investment for us on the farm.
And so you're producing all of this on about 5 acres.
Yes.
And what you mentioned, you've got a little bit more mechanization. So what does that look like? What equipment are you using for producing on 5 acres?
I have a 55 horsepower tractor with the front end loader. And when we first started, our experience with farms at that point was all kind of plasticulture. So we are still using that plastic layer and using plasticulture, especially for the summer months. We have really sandy soil and it tends to dry out a lot. So that plastic really kind of helps. In the last 2 years, we switched to the biodegradable plastic, and that saves us a lot, especially on labor there. To keep our management kind of the same from one field block to the other, even for crops where we're not using plastic, I will still use the plastic layer to build up the beds, to shape the beds. So every field block then has the same kind of shape to it. So for most of our crops, the biggest thing is harvest, right? Because we just put in 3/4 of an acre of potatoes this week. That's going to be quite a bit to get out.
And this is early March, just so listeners know that you're putting potatoes in early March.
When do you guys put in potatoes?
Not until late April at the earliest, May typically.
Yeah, and I think even for me, this feels a little bit earlier than usual, but we've had a really good fall spring so far here in North Carolina. That's kind of the thing with the weather in North Carolina is that we do see really low temperatures and we see really high temperatures. So the averages will fool you because you think it's a really nice climate, but we still have to contend with 20-degree nights. And what's been different this year for us is that it hasn't been cold really since Christmas. So it's been on a steady warming streak, and we kind of felt like we could risk it and get them in 2 weeks earlier than usual. So on the flip side, that's where I know a lot of the northern climates wait until the fall to harvest their potatoes. We can't do that here in North Carolina. By mid-July, the soil temperature is getting so hot that the potatoes will start to rot in the ground. So we typically start harvesting kind of towards the end of June and try to be done before mid-July.
It's going to be a continuing challenge for us that we noticed. It's like spring just gets aggressively hot here. And I think last May we had like a 92-degree day and the crops just were like blasted. So the potatoes were looking really sad. Like all the foliage in our onions was like completely whitewashed. They were green one day and ghastly white the next. So I think that's something that we're going to face moving forward with the storage crop idea is, because it's scary to invest so much into these handful of crops, but, how can we be smarter about harvest and really paying attention to things that are happening to the crop because of these extreme temperature changes? Like, for example, last year after that heat blast, one of our potato crops in particular, it got this, I forgot what it's called. It's like brown rots on the inside. It's like the vascular system of the potato is literally kind of blasted with heat, and it causes necrosis in the crop on the inside. And it's still totally marketable, still edible, but the customers can't handle non-perfect produce. So we weren't able to harvest this really workhorse for us in the winter because, that one event kind of really fried out that crop. So that is the advantage for us, being able to get this into the field as early as possible so that we can, before we get that really crazy heat up in the late spring and the summer, we can get all this stuff out of the ground and into the cooler.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it's such a moving target. I mean, again, with climate change, you have to be constantly adjusting dates and controlling for the uncontrollable.
Yeah.
So, and then also, I mean, if you're harvesting those potatoes in June, that means you've got to get them immediately into storage through the hottest, time of North Carolina too. So you've got to have all of that dialed in to maintain the quality. So yeah, a lot of different challenges for sure. I like how, our root cellars up north here they're not working as well because of climate change. We've had to put cool bots into some of our existing root cellars just to be able to cool them down early enough in the fall so that we can put the crops in. So it's crazy how all these things are changing pretty rapidly.
Yeah. And it's risky. I mean, it's risky, obviously. Farming's risky, and it's just getting riskier. So just think about that, kids, when you're going to get into this. But I think Ross wanted to talk more about the mechanization when it comes to harvesting, because that's a big deal for us for making this work.
Yeah. So like you said, when harvest time comes around, you really got to be organized. So for the potatoes in particular, we've used a potato harvester that we got from a company out of Idaho. It's just one of those that has a kind of a plowshare that goes underneath the potato hill, and then a series of bars on the back that vibrate the soil out. But that allows us to kind of get up probably like a fifth of an acre in a day with a couple people. The harvester itself runs pretty quick, but someone still has to pick them up off the ground, and so that takes a while. But yeah.
So, obviously, we couldn't do this with the digging fork. We with these larger scale of planting, we have to depend on this mechanized harvest to get this done. Yeah, so another tool that we were able to use this year was a chain digger for our sweet potato crop. Sweet potatoes are very difficult to harvest. Typically, we had this other system where we mowed the vines and we were cutting vines, and we were using our undercutter to try to loosen the soil. And we still had to use a digging fork to kind of pop them out of the ground. And it was very, very laborious. But this year we were able to borrow a chain digger from another farmer. And same concept with the potato harvester. It gets up under the crop. The crop is shook up on a chain. All the soil falls off, and the potatoes are on top of the ground for you to put into a crate. So that was really huge for us with our sweet potato crop this year, and making that a successful endeavor, because usually sweet potatoes are just so much work. It just doesn't seem worth it. But that chain digger made it a more viable option for us. So we just have to come up with the money to buy our own this year.
And then you're attending a farmer's market for, 27 weeks of the year from August to March. And what is the reason why you focused on a farmer's market model as opposed to wholesale? Kind of, talk about the draw for that for you.
I guess we've just always been in a farmer's market, and we can't escape it. I don't know, not to hate on farmer's market, but it's like we've been at Carborough Farmer's Market for how many years? 6 years. And it's a big chunk of money that's very difficult to walk away from. I would say that, again, talking about burnout and what led us to marketing this way is that going to the farmer's market every weekend of the year is pretty brutal. I know for some people it works out well and they love doing that, but for us, I just couldn't maintain it. And when it comes to like regular human life, like your regular human friends and your human family, like summertime is like the fun time when everybody is doing stuff. And it just kind of stinks being at the farmer's market every weekend. And for my family in particular, my sister is a professor, so she's off in the summers, and my niece and nephew are, out of school, and that's fun time. So just for me, I wanted to participate in that part of life, I guess, during the summertime more than I was able to when we were at market year round. So that's a way for us. We feel like this is a way to make the farmers market a little bit more sustainable for us in the long term instead of being there year round. And then we're also doing what we've been adding on is this partnership with the CSAs to help fill their winter boxes. So that's been another way for us to have income in the winter months instead of just only the farmers markets.
And this is a collaboration with 10 Mothers and Red's Quality Produce. Can you say more about that and how that came about?
Yeah, it's a Red Quality's Acre.
I tell you, 2020 was a weird year.
Yeah.
Red's Quality Acre, they were mostly focused on restaurant sales. And of course, with everything happening in 2020, they decided to make a shift and focus on the CSA. And we're pretty good friends. And he reached out to us and asked, if he did this, he wasn't sure he would be able to fill the orders during the main season. So could we add a couple things to make sure that, we were able to kind of back him up? As it turns out, he was able to keep up with spring and summer pretty well. But then going into the fall and winter, he really wanted more. He knew that with his space, because he's a smaller farm, I think an acre on mostly tunnel production. So he knew he wouldn't be able to pull enough out to maintain the CSA numbers. So we kind of collaborated there. That worked out fairly well. And I think it was the next year, Gordon from 10 Mothers reached out to us as well to kind of try that out. And this is now going on year 3 that we've done this collaboration. And I think it's been great.
Yeah, and I think it works out well because our farms are so different from their, so it's our productions are very complementary. So we're super not doing what they're doing, and they're really not doing what we're doing. So it's a benefit to both of us, and it's also great for the customer because they're getting more diverse product than if they were in just their CSA or in a CSA that our farm operated. So it's been a really great collaboration. I mean, we're learning a lot along the way, and there's still a lot to learn, but it seems to be working out for both farms, and I hope to continue to do more and more of that in the future.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really great model. And, I part of the reason I wanted to speak with you is because, you and 10 Mothers, you're in the same town. And like you said, you're farming very differently.
We're on the same street.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
So you're neighbors. And how wonderful it is, again, to have these sort of collaborative models. Why not take advantage of that marketing power and help make up for what one farm isn't producing and what you do really well. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. My goal is to never, ever start a CSA. So this really helps. And it just, again, not only helping each other, but it just makes smart business sense for us to not compete against each other. I am not a CSA farmer. I don't want to start that from scratch. They do, both those farms do such a good job at that. And that's not my skill set. So yeah, it's been really great, and I hope it continues. Again, my goal is to never run an open door farm CSA. So as long as we can do that.
Today's episode of the Winter Growers Podcast is brought to you by Farmer's Friend. In a world where the threat of food insecurity is quickly becoming the new norm, Farmer's Friend exists to equip, educate, and inspire growers to change the world through regenerative agriculture. Small farms are the future, and the future is now. If you need quality tools and supplies for your vegetable or flower operation, check out their growing selection of innovative and affordable tunnels, tools, tarps, and much more. Here at My Home Farm, we rely heavily on Farmer's Friend for our production. We have 3 of their Caterpillar tunnels. We use the silage tarps for occultation. Their row covers have gotten us through hard winters. And of course, the Quick Cut Greens Harvester has sped up our baby greens harvest tremendously. Visit farmersfriend.com/no-till today. That's farmersfriend.com/no-till, or visit the link in the show notes and get free shipping on your entire order. Today's episode is also brought to you by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are designed and built in Italy, where small-scale farming has been a way of life for generations. Discover the beauty of BCS on your farm with PTO-driven implements for soil working, shredding cover crops, spreading compost, mowing under fences, clearing snow, and much more, all powered by a single gear-driven machine that's tailored to the size and scale of your operation. We have been using a BCS tractor on our farm since 2014, and it has saved the day and leveled the workload more times than I can count, and I find new ways to employ it every single season. To learn more, view sale pricing, or locate your nearest dealer, visit bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. To learn more, view sale pricing, or locate your nearest dealer, visit bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. All right, back to the show.
And what about employees? Have you taken on employees over the last few years? What sort of, how does that work for your model?
I would say 2020 kind of really threw us for a loop. Ross was laid off from his day job, so he ended up being on the farm for about 6 months. So we had this weird time of where both of us were farming full time, and we had higher crew numbers to help us deal with the demand during the pandemic. And that demand has definitely kind of slacked off a bit for us. And I don't know, he went back and got a job, and it was really hard hiring people over the past couple years. So I guess that's my way of saying that us doing all this mechanization, having the rinse line, having the barrel washer has really cut down on our crew needs. I mean, significantly. We used to have a crew member that all he did was wash crates for hours and hours a week. And with the rinse line, we can wash all of our crates in a morning, like every crate on the farm. So some of those things that were really eating up labor, being like crop harvesting, or again, all the stuff we're doing in the pack shed, we've really made that more efficient with some of this equipment and have really cut down on our labor needs over the years. At least over the past couple of years.
And so do you currently have any employees, or when do you typically hire on labor through, again, if you're looking at sort of like marketing year round, which can hopefully help secure labor year round, are you able to do that, or how does that work?
As Jillian was saying, we've kind of been in this weird transition time with the pandemic and everything during 2020. So as we've been restructuring and shifting from all season to just winter production, we kind of had a period of time where we knew we wouldn't necessarily have any work for people. And we also wouldn't have there would be a revenue gap as we shifted from, doing that spring production to not. And so during 2021, we kind of did some big gaps in having any kind of hired help on the farm, and almost to our own detriment, right? Like you need some help. You can't do it all yourself. But now I think we've kind of gotten to a place where we really do have a need almost year round for some help on the farm, because by having all of that storage crop that needs processing all winter, that kind of keeps them busy all winter. And then that stuff that we're marketing in the winter from storage, like we said, we're already starting to plan out that stuff. So having help right now, what I kind of see is we're going to have some lulls here in the spring. But whereas most farms take advantage of a winter lull to do construction projects in the mud, we'll be able to do our construction projects when the weather's nice. So that's kind of where my mind is as far as like how we're going to manage this going forward. And I think we'll be able to keep labor on all year.
So we currently have somebody that worked with me all winter, and she'll be here through the spring. And another thing that we kind of played around with last year is that we do have these days where we do need a lot. It's kind of, instead of us planting a little bit every week and harvesting a little bit every week, it's more of like we're planting a lot and then harvesting a lot. And just so they're, like Ross said, there are these big lulls. So last year we had a few times where we had brought in old crew and they wanted to come and ride the transplanter all day to plant sweet potatoes or come in and help us with a building project. So I think there is the opportunity for us to take advantage of people that want to come work on the farm for a few days, but can't commit to working on the farm part-time or full-time. So I envision that we'll do more of that in the future. And also for the summertime, it seems like there's a lot of students around that could help us with these big bulk harvest of, potatoes, summer squash or winter squash and all that type of stuff. So I feel like that will be a way that we can manage crew in the future more efficiently so that we're not harvesting completely by ourselves.
And what are some of your favorite varieties for the crops that you've sort of narrowed down to? Do you have ones that you really love? Maybe can you share some of those with listeners?
Potatoes. And you can talk about winter squash?
Sure.
Okay. So traditionally, here, I'm going to get my slide out about all of you northern seed companies that claim to be producing heat tolerant varieties and things like that. While there may be a crop that will go into a main summer, it's much harder to produce a crop that can deal with 40, 50 degree temperature swings here in North Carolina. So for us, in particular with potatoes, we've stuck to some of those like tried and true old North Carolina varieties, things like Yukon Gold or Kennebec or Kennebec. I'm not sure how people pronounce that. Those do really well here. And we have pretty good success with other varieties that I really enjoy. The Adirondack Blue is a very nice one. But you got to be mindful of the heat because it will get hollow heart if you leave them in the ground too long. German butterballs are by far my favorite potato to eat. Like the flavor on them is just so great. But those are also very susceptible to heat necrosis. So they'll develop kind of brown spotting inside if they're left in for too long. So it's even more of a reason for us to get them in super early. So hopefully we can avoid some of those issues with those.
Thought about for our Irish potatoes, like marketing them as like our climate change potatoes with the little necrosis on the inside, because it's like, is that just the future of Irish potatoes for us? But yeah, I think what Ross was saying about, how to say it, you're very influenced by people that are in the small farming space. So you are looking to people in Maine or elsewhere that are growing these varieties, when sometimes it is in your advantage to like ask the old farmer down the road or go to your country store and see like what varieties they have and what they're planting, because they've done it for years and years and years. And those are the varieties that are probably more well adapted to your climate. So that's definitely something I would recommend, is looking around you and looking at maybe your university's literature around growing certain crops. When it comes to winter squash, I would say our most popular variety that we grow that the customer loves is the Sunshine Kabocha. We double that every year and we're growing more and more. Hopefully it's enough. It probably won't be. I love all the kabochas. My love of vegetables is rooted really in how long it will last in the cooler. I've sort other people's interests are like flavor and things like that, but I'm like, how long will this thing last? So like the Tetsubuko, I'm not quite sure I'm saying it right, but from Johnny's, that thing will last for an eternity. So that one's really cool, and it does have great flavor. I really love the kabochas. I love the flavors, and I really love how long that they last. So those are probably my favorite winter squash. We did another one this year called Thelma sweet potato. That one was pretty cool. Again, I think my interest is in the fact that it lasted so long in the cooler, but it had a really nice nutty flavor to it. So that's a big thing that I think is going to take us a while. Like we have to do an insane amount of trialing on this stuff to see like what is going to work best in our climate and what will keep the longest in storage. So it's kind of insane. Like our crop plan, it just has so much variety. And I think over the years that will whittle down to the more of the winners once we have a few more seasons under our belt.
Yeah. I mean, what's so challenging about that, longevity piece too, is it isn't just the cultivar, but it's also how it was grown, how it was then handled, and then how it's stored, right? So there's so many different variables that you're having to constantly think about. And you might get one perfectly one year, right? But the other ones you don't. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like this year, our onion crop was a total disaster. Like we have no business growing onions in North Carolina, but here we are again, doing it yet again. But we had really bad bacterial rot on the inside of our onions. So it's like you said, not only varietal, we really screwed up on the harvest time for that, especially with that crazy heat blast that we had in May. We should have got them out of the ground earlier, and then our pack shed isn't cooled for curing at the right temperature. So do we need to invest in insulating our pack shed, blah, blah. So like you're saying, there's all these other factors that are going into making these storage crops work. So yes, yet again, here we are with more onions, and hopefully this year will be a better year. And we learned a lesson from last year's disaster.
Yeah. And then meanwhile, there's the customer at the end buying it that one day and they have no idea what went into creating that.
Yeah. That's the farmer market lifestyle is we could write a book about the crazy things that customers say at the farmer's market. And you're just like, wow. There's more wonderful customers than there are crazy customers, though.
That's what keeps us coming back.
Yeah.
Well, I know, obviously you've been in this transition, but do you have any ideas for the future of your farm? What do you hope it to grow into, or have you even gotten to that visioning yet?
I think I like this form of farming. I am really terrible at, like our partner farms, like what Red Quality Acres and Bear and Gordon do, where it's just like this constant planting and constant turnover. I mean, they are just experts at that, and it's really, really great. And what we're doing is more suited to my way of being able to do things. It's like, we plant an acre and then we walk away from it and then we come back. So this, I feel like, has been a good model that fits our personalities better. And I want to continue doing that and continue trialing. And, our goal is ultimately, how can we have more variety in the wintertime? How can we figure out, can we do some of the stuff that the customers really are wanting, like broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts during the wintertime? And I think there is a lot of potential for that. So I think the future is certainly moving towards doing more of this and really honing in and getting better at it. I know for sure we will never, ever grow tomatoes or okra or, summer squash or anything like that. That's not for us anymore. So yeah, I want to have more abundance during the winter month and do a better job of having highest quality storage crops possible.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great goal. So thank you. So I think we're at our lightning round. Are you ready for the lightning round questions?
Sure.
Okay. Number one is your favorite crop to grow, cook, or eat.
My favorite crop is radicchio. I know that's the most popular thing to say right now. Uh, I don't know. We're both so country and have not really traveled the world or anything. So I can't pronounce any of the names of the radicchio that I eat, but I really, really love them. It's just a fun crop to grow. I love how, again, I'm fascinated by things that last forever and don't rot. So, we can harvest out of the field continuously. Very beautiful, very delicious. So I love radicchio salad. So that would probably be my favorite.
Jillian and the culinary gardener and Gordon from Ten Mothers, they all geek out over radicchio. But
so Gordon came over to the farm and he can actually pronounce all the stuff that I can't say. So it's a nice lesson for me.
Well, I think I'm pretty sure he spent some time in Italy, so that always helps too, right?
For me, I would say Irish potatoes are. I enjoy growing them. I love eating them. Like everything about them.
I love how you both say Irish potatoes. It must be such a Southern thing because, up here we just say potatoes, but then we call sweet potatoes sweet potatoes. So it's funny the differences. But yeah. And then you said your favorite variety was the German butterball, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. No, that's one of my favorites too. Number two, what's the hardest part of farming?
Everything. I don't know. It's hard to pinpoint on one particular thing. For us, it's been a really intense past 10 years of building this farm from scratch. So I feel like we're kind of coming out of the cloud of the chaos of doing all that. So, I feel like we're heading into a place where it's not always so chaotic, and I'll be less likely to say everything is hard about farming in the future.
What about for you, Ross?
It's not even really farming necessarily. It's running a business with your life partner. That takes a lot. There's a lot of coordination and discussion and negotiation that has to take place for that to work.
What's your favorite tool?
Oh, okay. I have a story for my favorite tool. Last year or year before last, we were purchasing something that needed to be unloaded from a semi truck. So I borrowed a set of pallet forks from a friend of ours, and he didn't need them back right away. So I had those pallet forks for about 3 months, and I was able to, I'm usually the one spreading fertilizer and stuff like that anyway. And all of a sudden I could move the whole pallet with just my fingertips. So the day that he came to pick those up, I came in the house and ordered another set so that I would never be without them again. That by far has been my favorite tool.
I think my favorite tool is probably our wheel transplanter. We just purchased a water wheel transplanter, but the one that we have been using for years was something that an irrigation company near us actually fabricated. So it was a very cheap, affordable wheel transplanter. And we've had that thing for years. And I would say that, again, I hate the word game changer, but that was a real big game changer on the farm for us because, crew love to ride the transplanter and can plant all day long. So I love it. And I feel like a lot of people have forged many a friendship on the back of the transplanter, just chatting and trying to solve world issues. And so I don't know. The transplanter has a lot of warm, fuzzy feelings because everybody's usually in a good mood and you're getting a lot of stuff done in a small amount of time. So that's probably my favorite. I'm excited to use the water wheel transplanter this year. I think that will be a nice transition for us.
Yeah, well, saves your back too, right? How can you not be in a good mood?
Yeah, we planted 1,200 pounds of Irish potatoes yesterday with the transplanter. So, and easy peasy. It was nice.
What's your favorite smell and least favorite smell on the farm?
Oh, favorite smell.
Oh, favorite smell is definitely fresh onions and soil. That smell of pulling onions out of the soil.
Yeah, for us, it's probably, let's see, we're planting them now. So by May, as you walk past the onion field and the wind blows a little bit and it just has that like fragrant kind of smell to it. That's great.
As long as it doesn't smell like onion rings, then that means they rotten. So there's a fine balance.
So what's the least favorite then? Rotting onions or?
Yeah, rotting onions. Oh, that's so tragic last year. Rotting seed potato. You stick your hand into a seed potato. That's pretty foul.
Mm.
It's very on par with that potato, right? Like you're just going along and you grab one and then it's just too soft and juicy. That's that smell.
Sorry, can you repeat that? You said pepper?
Yeah,
is that what I heard?
So like we do plant a little bit of peppers that we harvest in the fall. And as you're harvesting them and you go along and there's one that has like a blossom end rot or something and you grab it the wrong way and just get that juice on you.
Yeah, no fun. What do you love besides farming?
I would say for me, I really like to hang out with my family and my sister and my niece and nephew. So that's what I'm trying to do more of nowadays.
Hiking. I also enjoy my day job. I work as a computer engineer, and that has a lot of its own challenges and intricacies that are just really interesting. Yeah.
What would you be doing if you weren't farming?
I have a degree in zoology and biology, and I spent a lot of my undergrad in research labs, and after school, that's what I did. So I would definitely be in a lab right now if that's what I wasn't doing.
Farming still, but I think I would have to plant potatoes for the rest of my life, regardless of what else I was doing at the time. So
you could just be hired on by random farms. They come plant our potatoes. What's one piece of advice you wish you had starting out, or something you wish you had done differently?
I would say that I don't know. The instinct is to say that you wish you were in a better financial position when you started farming, but for us, it's like, well, what do you wait until you're like in your mid 40s? And I could not imagine starting this farm later in life. Like we needed youth on our side to do what we did. So I don't know. I would say be in a better financial position or start a retirement account immediately. You know, a good exercise for any young person is to Google a like Roth IRA calculator and put in, the max amount when you're 25 versus when you're 40. And you'll see the big difference that it makes when it comes to being financially stable or saving money, like when you're a young person. But like I said, it's how do you make that balance? Like, how do you have the gumption to do it, but also have the money? Obviously, that's the biggest challenge for small farmers now that are having to start farms from scratch. So I would just say, try to save more money if you can, if it's possible.
I would say try to go work on at least 2 different farms, even if just for a couple of days or a week or so, to understand how they operate. That was something we didn't have going into this. And I think we spent a lot of time trying to tool up and learn how to do things in a farming manner instead of a garden manner. And I think that could have saved us some time at the beginning, for sure.
What is your learning edge, or where do you feel like your abilities or understanding as a farmer could grow?
I think that we talk a lot about how, so us trying to mechanize, there's not as many resources out there as there are for, like, say, a no-till small-scale farm. And, I think that's why you see so many people going into that, because it's really great to have that type of resource out there. But for us, there's just we've got to figure out a lot of stuff to help us on a small vegetable farm use equipment. And there's probably equipment out there that we don't even know exists because it's just there's no class to take or resource to use. So we're just constantly on YouTube or Instagram, like looking at this type of equipment that exists out there that maybe it could help us on, our scale of vegetable farming. So
even the idea of freeing up a Saturday that I could go to a farm auction.
Yeah.
Because there are folks around here who are second, third generation farmers, and they have this knowledge on this equipment that is literally rusting away somewhere that, could really help us out.
So when I think about learning, me and Ross were talking about this yesterday, but, when I first started this, I would look at types of equipment or the rinse line, and I'd be like, that's not for me. Like, I'm scared of that stuff. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to fix equipment. And, that definitely has changed over the years. And we have the ability to bring something onto the farm and figure it out or fix it or figure out how to acquire it and get it delivered here and get it off the truck and all that stuff. And I know that sounds silly, but that is a skill set of trying to manage all that stuff. So I think we just moving forward, we're a lot smarter about like how to try to find the stuff that could work for us. Does that sound like a good learning edge?
Yeah, good answer. What do you long for, and how does that influence how you farm?
I long for not chaos. I long to not be building a farm from scratch.
I seek a lot of dichotomy in what I'm doing. So as a computer engineer, I spend a lot of time sitting and kind of in meetings talking to people. So kind of some of the things that we do on the farm is just a nice way for me to be outside and away from folks and just like, in the fresh air and moving my body. And I think that's a big influence on how I approach things on the farm.
I long for one day, Ross, to not be sitting in a chair inside and, actually working full time on the farm. But we'll see what the future holds.
What do you feel is your gift to give on behalf of people and the land?
Farm name is very crunchy and goofy, like Open Door Farm. We were very like starry-eyed, silly people when we started this whole thing. But the concept with our name was that we would be a place where customers could come and ask us whatever they wanted to know about our way of production, because, that's obviously still a conversation that our communities have, is like the people want to know how their food is grown. And I think that's evolved in a lot of ways, not only that we want to be open to customers, but that we really, really want to be open to any person that wants to get into agriculture. We are willing to help you however you want to. We try to help people with equipment. We let people use our stuff. They can come use the barrel washer. Just to us, it doesn't make any sense to like not share resources, and be it educational or actual physical resources. So we hope in the future to be as helpful as we can to anybody that wants to get into this. And, we're not dogmatic about anything. It doesn't matter the way you want to farm. We've done it all at this point. So we want to help people as much as we can.
And finally, how will you grow old farming?
I already feel like I'm old.
Last 3 to 4 years, we've been making a huge investment in mechanization and automation, and just thinking about those kind of ergonomic issues. I think me being off the farm most of the time actually helps that situation, because I can come and observe what they're doing, and I realize like, you're bending over too far, or you're having to do, some kind of body movement that doesn't necessarily make sense. Can we change this somehow? And kind of take that approach of, we need to do this in a way that's going to be comfortable for the next 30 years.
I think, on the financial side of things, like I said, we're kind of coming out of this cloud of chaos of starting this farm from scratch. And, I feel like we can start to really hone in on profitability and trying to raise our wages and trying to raise our employees' wages, trying to keep people around because they like to be here and it makes financial sense for them. And so I think that's, we're heading in that direction of, like I said, being a little bit less insane, chaotic.
Yeah. No, it's not. Finding stability is always the challenge, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you both for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate talking with you, hearing your story and your approach. And thank you so much. It's really been great having you.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for having us. Hopefully we said useful things.
Definitely.